Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where finally, as you can see, success. This might not look like success, but I assure you this is success because look at this. Yeah, it's slightly explosion-y, but more importantly, we can extend all of the pistons and retract all of the pistons all at the same time. I finally have the action groups working, and I'll show you what I did here. So we're going to go back to the vehicle assembly. So what we've got at this point is I realized it was working previously. We were just resetting to the build extension. So what I've got here now, if we select one of these pistons, you can see we've got a Custom 01 and a Custom 02. Custom 01 is set to extend, and Custom 02 is set to retract, and now those happen when I hold 1 and 2. So that's now working. We had a successful-ish landing on the surface of Duna with the test parameters in the last episode. But it was only successful-ish, and we ended up losing some components here. I realized why we were picking up the spin as well. It's because we were on horizontal velocity minus. Yeah, we don't want to be there, because as our horizontal velocity hits 0, that starts to spin because we pick up a little bit here and there, and the horizontal velocity just goes all over the place. So what we want to do is I want to put this out on the pad. We want to bring this in one more time, and this one should be far, far more stable. So the question then is, how do we want to go about, delivering this thing properly? But that's going to be a question for another time, because right now this is just about proofing the overall landing technique, right? And we're going to have a little bit more fuel in this stage because we want to get rid of all of our horizontal velocity. In fact, I'm thinking about, I'm thinking about pulling this back right now. And let's put a little bit more fuel in this stage here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the fuel out of here. That's no longer going to be there. And we're going to not get rid of this. We're just going to move this back a little bit. And I'm just going to double the amount of fuel here. So this is not the most cost-efficient way to do that, but I don't feel like moving all of these parts. So we're just going to put a second tank there, and we'll do that. And I also, for the purposes of testing here, I want to toss in a KER here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into, hang on. Here we go, Kerbal Engineering System. So we're going to grab this, and I'm just going to slap that there. So that'll be fine, and let's see if we can bring this thing down a little bit more properly. So the goal here is going to be to try to almost pinpoint the landing, although it's not going to be perfectly accurate with the technique I have in mind. And we know that. We're going to have to transfer it over the surface some amount, which is the purpose of the wheel system. So that's absolutely okay. As long as we can ballpark pinpoint it, that's absolutely ideal. So let's set this in orbit around Duna at the lowest safe orbit here. And in fact, I want it to be a little lower than this, because we know this is going to set us at 60 kilometers, right? But we know that the atmosphere doesn't start until 50. So we can drop this semi-major axis a little bit. If we do this and override the safety check, that's about correct. Okay, perfect. So let's set this to horizontal velocity minus. Yes, that's eventually going to be a problem for us, but we'll just go ahead and get into position here. I also want to extend out our wheels. There we go. That is done. We'll get ourselves rotated around. We're in the shadow of Ike here, so everything is very dark, but that's fine for now. Okay, let's warp around to this side over here, and we're, of course, going to need to exit physics warp to do that. And our overall goal is going to be to say we want to land in this canyon, right? So if we added a maneuver here, and this maneuver were to be, I want to be focused on Duna right now. This maneuver were to be something like this, right? This is killing basically all of our horizontal speed, and we wanted to land, say, here. Now, this is going to orbit underneath us. That's understood. We are in 10x time. Yeah, this is because we're so low here. So that's absolutely fine. Why is this burn time show? Oh, because we're on thrust limiter of 0. That'll do it. So let's bring our thrust limiter up to 100. There we go. And now I want to somewhat increase this amount here. So it's going to be about 900 meters per second. That's understood. That's nearly all of our fuel in here. So we're only going to have a little bit of fuel left over for these guys here. Oh, no, there is one there. I just didn't see it. It blended in. Okay, cool. So that's fine. We're going to be aligned to the node. And for the moment, let's just get aligned. We're going to have to warp to this. 10x is going to be the fastest we can go. So that's going to be a little bit obnoxious. But this is going to be a more realistic entry at this point. So that's absolutely fine. So what we're testing right now is if we can, and I kind of want to move this forward over to here. We're testing to see how precisely we can do this landing and how this is going to work if we're dropping basically straight down. Because we did have some horizontal velocity to this previously, and that's absolutely noted. So we're going to want to hold this in basically a kill rot at this point by the time we get there. And it's going to take it a moment to get us there at 10x warp. So that's the downside of coming down this low, is that we are absolutely limited to 10x warp. And that's just something we'll have to deal with in the actual mission. This is still simulated, obviously, because we teleported it here, so that's fine. How are we doing on our electric charge? It's fine. I don't really want to extend these solar panels. We should maybe replace them, though, with retractable solar panels. Because when we first enter the atmosphere, I want them to be stowed. I don't know if the atmosphere of Duna is actually thick enough to break these in this trajectory. I don't know that it is. But I also don't know that it isn't. So there's that. Now, I can see we're a little off on our node here. I'm just going to lock to the node for now. And we are about a minute away from this burn starting, and this is not the angle that I want to be at. We want the wheels to be facing the ground, so they're going to be right out over this way. Something like that. Okay, so we're going to commence this, but we can't do it just yet. 40 seconds, 30, 20, 10, and 3, 2, 1, 0, mark. I haven't initialized this engine yet, so we should do that. Okay, so we're trying to land in this canyon here is the goal. It's a pretty big target, and we'll see how this ends up going. Hang on, the canyon has moved on us. Okay. So we're just going to, and this is expected that the canyon would move on us. We're just going to do that. That burn is going to be in about 30 seconds. That's fine. So we'll warp forward a little bit further here. 25 seconds, 20, 10, and 4. It's hard to see. 3, 2, 1, 0, mark. Okay, there we go. So this is absolutely fine for now. We want to be maintaining position here for the moment. So we're just killing off our horizontal speed at this juncture. I don't actually care about vertical speed at this moment, so I'm going to put us at horizontal velocity minus for right now. And we just want to get this horizontal speed absolutely gone. So it's down to about 400. I'm a little concerned about having enough fuel for our cushioning. We'll see how that ends up going. So we're just watching this horizontal speed number here, 300 meters per second. I don't actually care about this anymore. I used it for timing. So that's absolutely fine. 250 meters per second. 200 meters per second. So we'll still have about 200 meters per second in this. That should be enough fuel, I think. So we're down to about 100 horizontal meters per second. And I'm going to put this in kill rot right now. 30 meters per second. 20. 10, and let's just gently ease this down a little bit. 3, 2, 1, and this is basically still. So we're going pretty much straight down at this point. So what I want to do is I want to shut down this engine, and I'm going to stage. So what that does is that activates all of these engines, although I don't know if we have crossfeed here. We do? That is good. We want crossfeed. And how much fuel is left here? There is some. Okay. We could move half of this fuel over here if we needed to. We'll see what it feels like. And we can see we're building up speed right now. This is expected. So we're just dropping straight in. The question is this landing system sufficient to slow us down? And I think it should be. That's the theory anyway. So we're going at about 260 meters per second, nearly entirely vertically. There is a little bit of horizontal speed built up here, but that's okay. We don't mind that. We're coming down in the canyon, and this is the goal. We're trying to not exactly precision land this, but ballpark land it, right? We don't want to land within 2 meters of our base. We want to land within 2 kilometers of our base. That's the goal. So as long as we can do that, that would be fine. 2 kilometers would not be too terribly bad to traverse on these wheels. So we're going to need to, of course, do a bit of a landing burn, and we can watch what that's looking like here, but this is not going to be accurate at all because of drag. Okay, so we can see that we're beginning to tip here. So I'm going to move some of this fuel out, like that. So that killed the rotation. We're not actually trying to fight this very much, are we? Because I want us to be up over this way. But we're not going all that fast. 380 meters per second isn't too bad. So we're going to be coming down in this canyon eventually. We're just trying to nose up a little bit here. There's the drogue chutes. I'm going to stop. I'm going to turn Smart ASS fully off right now. I want to see what our natural sitting point is. So the main chutes are going to be going out soon. The drogues are slowing us. There's the mains pulling out. Okay. That's ideal right there. Or close to ideal. That's really, really nice. Okay, so I'm putting us in kill rot right now, and then I'm moving us up to the horizon. Or trying to. Okay, so we can't quite make it there. That's understood. That should be reasonably fine. So the parachutes are just bringing us slowly down. We're at about 20 meters per second here. So that looks pretty good. We could definitely move a little bit more fuel if we wanted to. What would that look like if we moved all of this fuel over? Okay, so it wants to sit about here. Hang on, we're shifting. One thing we could do is we could move these parachutes forward here to have a little bit more pull-up on this side. So that's definitely an interesting option, but I think this is viable here. So you can see we're going to come down here. We could have some thrusters to steer this, but honestly, I think this is good enough. We're coming down pretty much exactly where we expected to. So that looks good for the moment. So 19.2 meters per second is reasonably fine. I'm going to put this on kill rot for the moment. Okay, I'm just feeling out how much this is actually doing. We're still about 200 meters up right now, but... Okay, so that's definitely kicking us forward. Yeah, that was definitely not ideal in that regard. So what we want probably is to move these slightly more forward. We just had a little bit too much push on the one direction there. Specifically, it was trying to put our engine side down And that's not exactly what we want, right? So that's understood. We were fine on the initial contact, but it's always when this part impacts that we have the big problem. So a good solution to that would be, for one thing, we can move these to here, and that will move us a little bit in terms of that overall positioning, so that is fine. And then I want to look at our center of mass versus our center of thrust, and you can see immediately where the problem is. That said, this fuel is burned, and most of this fuel is burned too. We ended up having about this much fuel left, so 144 and 176 approximately. So you can see if we had something like this, we're still definitely offset on that thrust. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this twitch here, and I'm going to move this twitch here as well. 1.5 thrust to weight over Duna isn't a huge amount of thrust to weight, but it doesn't have to be. So I'm just wanting to put this guy about here then, and this guy about here as well, ideally. So that's not going to be perfect, but it will hopefully be a little bit better. Okay, so that should be reasonably fine. Now, what I'm going to do at this point, because we've proved... Oh, wait, I didn't put the fuel back in. We need to put the fuel back in. We've proved at this point the deorbit is absolutely fine, and we can slow down enough. So what I want to do is I don't want to have to worry about the deorbit portion at this point. That's a whole lot of... Well, it's a whole lot of time, right? As we do each of these test iterations. It's a lot of time for the deorbit. So we need to just estimate the fuel amount, which actually we have the estimated fuel amount here. So what I'm going to do is, with this estimated fuel amount, we're just going to set our position over Duna. We don't care where exactly, at an altitude of 50 kilometers. And we're just going to go straight down. Again, I don't really care about the position on Duna. So this is fine. And we're upside down right now. It's actually a pretty close position. We landed up over here previously. So that seems fine. Oh, okay. Let's just do this and not overshoot quite as much, hopefully. Okay, let's put this in kill rot for the moment. We're on the 90-degree heading, which seems absolutely fine. This engine at this stage of the test should be shut down, and then we should just stage everything and make sure our landing gear is extended. Okay. I'm noticing that we're at 55 kilometers. Because it put us at 50 kilometers surface altitude. Okay. And we're physics easing. Hang on, that's scatterer. We do not want to be physics easing. Okay. So bring this right on around. Now we're not physics easing. Ooh, definitely overshot that. Okay. So no physics easing happening here. That looks good. You can see our horizontal speed is basically nil. And this is actually going to be a slightly worse case scenario than when we landed in the canyon. And the reason for that is, of course, because this is higher ground here. So that's absolutely fine. We should still be... These should be armed. You should be deactivated. And these should be armed. Okay, that makes sense because this wasn't previously staged. That's fine. Okay, so we're in this position right now, and the question is, with the fuel in this Rockamax tank, where does that put our overall angling here? That was a very, very close to successful landing previously, but it wasn't quite there. So we're just going to bring this straight on down. We're now in the atmosphere, and we're going to hold this attitude as best we can. In fact, I might want to turn Smart ASS off and use stability assist, that might work better here in countering, because Killrot doesn't appear with Smart ASS to actually attempt to counter the aerodynamic forces. So SAS might be a better way to do this here. And I can see that it is indeed attempting to counteract the pitch force. So that looks good. We are speeding up at this moment. We're 25 kilometers up, and let's just accelerate a little bit here. Yeah, we can see we're definitely attempting to fight that pitch force. No doubt about that. So we're now at about 15 kilometer altitude, coming in straight on down. We may want to think about drogues out here. I think the drogues are going to attempt to pull us quite a bit, but we are falling this direction. Okay. That's noted. We're not going to see any chutes for a little bit here. It's fine that we lose attitude at this point. That's A-okay. So there goes all the chutes. This is a much worse case scenario than previously. Not a worst case scenario, but this is a worse case scenario than previously. So we can see that we've definitely got a little weight over here. This is being pulled up a lot more than it was previously because of the positioning of these chutes. So let's just move this fuel over to here. Okay. So that'll help matters significantly. In fact, that might be too much fuel movement. I think it is. But we're starting to bring it back. And we can start to slow this down a little bit here. Well, that's inauspicious. Okay. So, obviously, that's a significant problem. I'm just watching these parachutes move. That's pretty funny, actually. Hilarious. Okay, so the issue there is losing that attitude, right? And there's a couple things that I want to do about that. First off, I want to duplicate these drogue chutes. So we're going to put this here, and we're going to put this here. Then, that is going to cause this side to lift more, which is understood. And I think that's what we need with the fuel over here. We want the fuel to be over on this side because of the center of mass. Now, this is actually still going to be too far over here. So actually, we do need these engines to be over on this side. That is going to be a necessity. Wait a sec. This engine being here, and this engine being here, puts it about dead center. Okay. So that seems fine as long as we don't have any fuel out here, and as long as we have this exact amount of fuel in this fuel tank. That's not amazing, because that's going to make this difficult to replicate in a real run, right? Unless we have a very specific amount of fuel in that tank. We could have vents and vent out the correct amount of fuel, but what happens if we have less fuel? What happens if we don't quite have enough? We would have to do a refueling mission. That would be obnoxious. I prefer not to do that, for sure. Okay, let's just put this into position here. Let's run one more quick test and see with the positioning there and the additional 2 drogue chutes, what does this feel like? It'll be interesting, for sure. So we'll just go ahead and set this position over Duna. Override the safety check, please. This should be at an altitude of 50 kilometers, and this is fine. I really don't care about where on Duna we're coming in. So we're just going to clear the input blocker, rotate this around, extend out our landing gear. Overshoot it, of course. Okay, something kind of like that. I'm going to stage twice and deactivate this engine for now. We could use that engine to point at our base and get us a little closer if we needed to, but for right now, this will be fine. So I want to go here, just changing our position a little bit, and stability assist is going on. There. Okay, downward we go. So we're just warping down as quick as we can. We are in the atmosphere now. I want to be in radar altitude. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have 2 additional drogue chutes back here. That'll help us slow down slightly with just chutes. But landing with just chutes on Duna is... you need a lot of chute for that. That's for sure. Okay, so we are definitely starting to pick up a lot of aerodynamic forces. You can see we're starting to go engine side down here. That's absolutely understood, and this is with all of our additional fuel up here. So that is, you know, not necessarily ideal. We are attempting to make our way back up towards our original point. But where's this going to sit at? That's the question here. So we've got the additional chutes here. We can always cut chutes, but I'm wondering where exactly are we going to be in terms of our... This is interesting. Okay, just stop it about there. So that's going to change our retro thruster balance, right? That's the real downside to moving around the fuel, because we can get this thing into a good position for the landing burn, but then the moment we start up the landing burn, we're likely going to have some problems. Which I'm going to start it now. Yep. And you can see it immediately tries to pull it around like, hang on. Okay, so that worked, but we should not count on that working long term. That is definitely not something that we should be prepared to always have happen. I just want to turn us a little bit like this. There we go. So I think we lost the wheel that was out over here. Hang on, let's find out. Yeah, we lost a lot of this, but that's considered an acceptable landing. But that is not a reproducible landing. That is not something that we can count on doing over and over again. So the core issue here is one of weight distribution, and that's a solution that we will need to solve in a way that is reproducible from a point of view where we don't know how much fuel we have. That's the core issue there. And I'll have to give some thought about how I want to approach that. For now, it's time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, we might put this one to rest for a little bit and say the overall theory is sound here. The overall execution of it is going to be challenging. I think that's pretty safe to say at this point. But we do need to get our core onto the world at some point. So we might start working on landing the core, which should be substantially easier than landing this. That's something we can definitely be working on. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Dark Horse, Ethan Feldman, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.